At my father's funeral, the air was heavy with grief until my uncle lunged forward, grabbed the podium, and shouted, "You don't deserve his name. Give it back." The church gasped. Some stared at me, others at him. My hands shook, but in my pocket lay the envelope Dad had left for this moment. I tore it open and read aloud, "My son is my legacy." Gasps turned into shouting, and suddenly my father's farewell became a battlefield. "My name is Ethan Morales, I'm 33 years old, and I never imagined my father's funeral would erupt into chaos." I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in a family where legacy was everything. My father, Richard Morales, was a decorated Army veteran who served 20 years and came home with more scars than medals. To me, he was simply Dad, a man who made pancakes on Saturdays, who taught me to ride a bike by jogging behind me until his knees gave out, who told me bedtime stories about courage but always reminded me that courage without kindness was nothing. To others, especially his older brother Victor, Dad was the symbol of the Morales name. Discipline, strength, authority. And in Victor's eyes, I was the disappointment who hadn't lived up to it. See, I chose teaching. I've been a high school history teacher for almost a decade. I don't wear a uniform. I don't bark orders. My days are filled with lesson plans, rowdy teenagers, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing a struggling kid finally light up when history makes sense. I thought Dad was proud of me, even if Victor never was. But Victor never missed a chance to remind me that I wasn't a real Morales. At family gatherings, he'd ask why I wasn't in law enforcement, or why I wasted my degree on kids who don't care. At Christmas, he'd raise his glass and toast to strong men who carry our name, while pointedly looking past me. Dad would always deflect, change the subject, or give me a subtle squeeze on the shoulder, like saying, "Don't let him get to you." But I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. When Dad passed from heart failure last month, it broke me. The man who believed in me when no one else did was gone. But in his final days, he asked me to do something unusual. He gave me a sealed envelope and told me, "Don't open it until the funeral. Read it if you have to." You'll know when I didn't understand at the time, but I nodded, because when a dying man, especially your father, gives you instructions, you follow them. So there I was, standing at the podium in front of friends, family, neighbors, and veterans who had served beside him. My palms sweaty, my voice trembling as I tried to honor the man who raised me. And then Victor exploded. He stormed forward, his face red, his voice thundering through the church. "You don't deserve his name. Give it back!" Gasps filled the air. My aunt clutched her pearls. Cousins whispered. The priest looked frozen. For a moment, I thought my knees would buckle. But then my hand brushed the envelope in my pocket. Dad's last words, his shield, his final defense of me. And I realized I wasn't just about to read a letter. I was about to ignite a war. The church smelled faintly of lilies and candle wax, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes long after you've left. People filled every pew, neighbors, colleagues, fellow veterans. Some were crying softly, others staring ahead with that hollow expression grief always carves into faces. I stood at the podium, fingers trembling as I unfolded the paper I'd prepared. Just a few words about my father, about his quiet strength, his unwavering faith, the way he never let bitterness take root even after the war. But before I could begin, I saw movement in the front row. My Uncle Victor stood. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. At first I thought he was coming up to stand beside me, maybe to share his own memory. But the moment he reached the podium, he ripped the microphone out of my hand so forcefully that the speakers screeched. Then he bellowed, "You don't deserve his name. Give it back!" The words cracked through the church like thunder. For a moment, everything froze. My cousin Sophia gasped so loudly half the pew turned toward her. Someone dropped their prayer book. The priest looked as if he'd just swallowed a mouthful of ash. Victor wasn't done. He pointed at me with a shaking finger, spit flying from his mouth. "You stand there pretending you're Richard's son. But you're weak. You chose chalkboards over combat, excuses over honor. My brother's blood built this family, and you..." His voice cracked. You don't carry it right. Murmurs broke out. Some family members nodded grimly, their eyes sharp on me. Others shifted uncomfortably, clearly appalled. I should have walked away. That's what a sane man would do at his father's funeral, but I didn't. My chest was tight, my pulse hammering in my ears, and all I could think was, Dad knew this was coming. My hand slid into my jacket pocket and brushed the envelope. The envelope. His final words. Victor sneered, seeing the hesitation in my eyes. Say something, he barked. Defend yourself. Or admit it, you've stained his name. Give it back. Give it back. I looked out at the crowd. Some wouldn't meet my gaze. Some leaned forward, hungry for a scene. My mother had her head bowed in her hands, shoulders trembling. That was when I pulled out the envelope. Slowly, deliberately, the seal still intact. What's that? Victor demanded. A letter, I said, my voice low but steady. From Dad. He wrote it before he passed, told me to read it when I knew the moment was right. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some gasped, some leaned closer. Victor's face twisted. Don't you dare! You probably forged that yourself. Another trick to convince everyone you mattered to him. My brother wouldn't waste ink on you. I held the envelope higher so everyone could see. Then let's hear his words. Not mine. His hands shaking, I tore the paper open. The ripping sound echoed in the silence, sharp as a gunshot. Inside was a single page, handwritten in the neat, slanted script I'd seen on every birthday card and post-it note Dad had ever left me. My throat tightened. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I read. My son is my legacy. Not because he fought my battles, but because he chose his own path. Because he lives with the courage to be kind and the strength to stand even when mocked. My name belongs to him because my heart belongs to him. Anyone who says otherwise never knew me. The words rang through the microphone, filling every corner of the church. For one suspended heartbeat, silence. Then it exploded. Half the room gasped, real, sharp intakes of breath. My aunt sobbed openly. A group of Dad's old army friends clapped once, then again, until it became applause. But Victor's side? They erupted into shouting. Fake! One cousin cried. He made that up. Another yelled, letters can be forged. Blood can't. The church fractured, two camps shouting over each other, grief curdling into rage. And I stood at the center, gripping the page so tightly the edges crumpled, knowing this wasn't just a funeral anymore, it was a trial, and my father's letter was the only evidence that mattered. The last word of my father's handwriting still echoed through the church. Anyone who says otherwise never knew me. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe Victor would finally shut his mouth. But I should have known better. He lunged toward me, his face blotched red, his voice breaking into a roar. Give me that letter! The congregation gasped as he grabbed the edge of the paper, trying to rip it out of my hand. The microphone squealed as it tipped sideways, our struggle broadcasting every grunt and scrape. Stop this! The priest cried, rushing forward. This is sacred ground. But Victor wasn't listening. His fingers dug into mine, nails biting skin. This is a lie, he bellowed. He never wrote those words. You forged it to steal his honor. I yanked the page back, holding it high. My voice trembled, but it was loud enough to cut through the chaos. Dad wrote this for me. For this moment. He knew you'd try to tear me down. That's why he gave me proof. The church split further. On one side, my father's old army brothers stood up, their voices booming. I recognize Richard's handwriting, one shouted. He always said his boy was a teacher, not a soldier. That's something he was proud of, another barked. But Victor's supporters fired back. He's disgracing the name Morales. That letter's convenient, isn't it? He's just twisting Richard's words for sympathy. Voices collided in a storm, echoing against the vaulted ceiling. The funeral no longer felt like a farewell. It was a battlefield. I tightened my grip on the letter, but Victor was relentless. He shoved me back against the podium, wood splintering under the impact. Gasps rippled as my mother cried out, "Victor, stop!" That was when two ushers, both burly men from the veterans group, rushed forward. They pulled Victor off me, their hands gripping his arms like vices. He struggled, spitting curses, his voice hoarse. "You'll never be him. You'll never carry this family. You're nothing." I stood, chest heaving, my father's letter clutched against my heart. My hands shook, not from fear anymore, but from fury. I turned to him, my voice sharp, amplified by the microphone the priest had righted. "You call yourself his brother, but you don't understand him at all. Dad's legacy wasn't medals or business deals or how loud you could shout at a funeral. It was loyalty, compassion, honor. And you wouldn't recognize those if they were carved into your skin." For the first time, Victor's eyes flickered, not with rage, but with something closer to fear. Maybe because the crowd was shifting. The applause had returned, louder now, rising above the jeers. People clapped, some stood. Others shouted, "Enough!" Victor wrenched himself free of the ushers and stormed toward the aisle, his supporters trailing after him in a tide of muttering, furious faces. The heavy church doors slammed behind them, rattling in their frames. The silence that followed was fractured, uneasy. Some family members sat in stunned quiet, others whispered frantically. My mother wept openly in the front pew. The priest cleared his throat, his voice trembling. We are here to honor Richard Morales, a man who clearly left strong feelings behind. Perhaps his final letter speaks louder than anything we can say today." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Carefully, I laid the letter on the podium where all could see. The paper fluttered gently, fragile but unbroken. Then I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "This was his voice, his choice, and I will not let anyone erase it." The applause came again, stronger this time, filling the hollow where grief had been. But I knew, even as I stepped back from the podium, that this was far from over. Victor wouldn't let it die here. He'd declared war in front of everyone, and men like him don't retreat. Dad's letter had saved me in that moment, but it had also lit a fuse, and the explosion was still coming. The funeral should have been the end of it, a farewell, a closing chapter. Instead, it was just the opening salvo. By the time we returned home that night, my phone was already buzzing. Texts from cousins, voicemails from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Half were furious, half supportive. No one was neutral anymore. One cousin wrote, "Victor says you forged the letter. He's talking about going to court to contest it." Another, "Ignore him. Dad always told me how proud he was of you. We've got your back." It was as if my father's death had detonated a bomb at the center of our family tree, and the branches were snapping under the shockwave. 3 days later, Victor proved he wasn't done. He showed up at my mother's house with 3 of my uncles in tow. They barged in without even knocking, their voices already raised. I was there, helping Mom sort through Dad's belongings when the door slammed against the wall. "You think you can parade that letter around like it's gospel?" Victor barked, jabbing a finger at me. "Not without proof. We're demanding a handwriting analysis, independent, not one of your friends vouching for you." Mom rose from her chair, trembling. "Victor, this is my house. My son is grieving." "Your son is tarnishing our family's name," Victor snapped. "Richard belonged to all of us, not just him." That letter should have been read by me. I stood slowly, clutching the box of Dad's medals I'd been packing. My voice was even, but my blood burned. "Dad didn't give the letter to you. He gave it to me. That tells you everything you need to know." One of my uncles, Manuel, crossed his arms. "Richard was proud of our service." "You? You chose chalk dust and essays? Victor's right. You're not the Morales heir. You're just convenient." I felt something snap inside me. For years I'd endured their quiet digs, their smug little jabs. But now they were trying to rewrite my father's words, his last words. Convenient? I said, my voice sharp. I was the one who drove Dad to every doctor's appointment when his legs gave out. I was the one who sat with him at 3 a.m. when his nightmares came back. Where were you? Victor? Manuel? You showed up for birthdays and barbecues. I showed up when it mattered. For a moment, silence. My words hit like a slap. Even Mom's eyes welled up with fresh tears. Victor recovered first. He leaned closer, his breath hot, his teeth clenched. You think this ends with a piece of paper? Number. I'll rally the family, you'll see. You can't stand against us all, I held his gaze. Then rally them. But you're not fighting me. You're fighting Dad's truth. And you'll lose. That night, the family group chat exploded. Screenshots pinged back and forth. Victor accusing me of manipulating Dad, me posting the scanned letter for everyone to read. The split became undeniable. Aunts, cousins, even family friends weighed in. Some praised me for standing tall. Others hurled insults, parroting Victor's claim that I had twisted Richard's legacy to suit myself. The shouting wasn't confined to messages. At Dad's favorite diner, 2 of my cousins nearly came to blows in front of half the town. At the local church, whispers spread like wildfire. Strangers gave me tight smiles of support, or cold glares of suspicion. It wasn't just a family feud anymore, it was public. And Victor thrived in that chaos. He began calling meetings with his side of the family. He told anyone who'd listen that the Morales name was under siege. He spoke of me as if I were an enemy soldier, not his nephew. Mom tried to shield me, but she was caught in the storm too. Some of her own sisters stopped visiting, too afraid of Victor's wrath. One night she sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. Your father wanted peace, she whispered. But Victor, he only knows war. I reached across, laying the letter gently on the table between us. The ink was faded, the creases worn from my hands. Then it's time we stop pretending he can take this from me. Dad wrote it for a reason, and I won't let Victor erase it. Mom nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, I saw not just grief in her eyes, but something harder. Resolve. The eruption had split our family down the middle, and while Victor screamed louder, I realized something important. Dad hadn't chosen me because I was the loudest. He'd chosen me because I was steady, because I'd endure. And if Victor wanted a war, I was ready. A week after the funeral, the first letter arrived. Not from my father, but from a law office downtown. It was crisp, formal, cold. Victor Morales and associated family members hereby request a forensic analysis of the handwritten document presented at the funeral of Richard Morales. Pending determination of authenticity, the undersigned reserves the right to contest matters of estate and reputation in civil court. I read it twice, my jaw tightening. Contest my father's reputation? As if honor were something you could drag into court and wrangle like a property dispute. Mom slammed the letter down on the kitchen counter. He's gone mad, she whispered. This isn't grief anymore. It's obsession. But I wasn't surprised. Victor had always treated the Morales name like a crown he deserved, and Dad choosing me, quiet, bookish, chalk-dusted me, was something he couldn't accept. I called the lawyer listed, calm, professional voice on the other end. Mr. Morales, we will need access to the original document for testing. I said no, flat. My father entrusted that letter to me. If Victor wants to challenge it, he can do it publicly. I won't hand over his last words to be pawed at by people who never respected them. The lawyer sighed. Then you should prepare. This will get uglier. And it did. The following Sunday, Victor showed up at the town community hall with a microphone in hand. He gathered his side of the family and half the neighborhood, declaring that I had stolen Richard's legacy and that the Morales line was being corrupted by weakness. Someone recorded it and posted it online. By evening, the video had over 10,000 views in local groups. The comments cut both ways. Victor's lost it. Ethan deserves respect. He was always by Richard's side. But also, why hide the letter from testing if it's real? Looks like the teacher boy is scared. I couldn't let that narrative fester, so I did something Victor never expected. I called a press conference, not with reporters, but with the very same veterans who had served with Dad. Men who knew his handwriting, his voice, his values. We met at the VFW Hall, a low-ceilinged room lined with flags and photographs. Dozens of men and women showed up, some in faded uniforms, some with canes, all with the same look of hard-earned loyalty. I stood before them, the letter framed behind glass. My voice carried steady, even though my heart raced. This is my father's hand. You know it. You saw it in his field reports, his letters home, the notes he scrawled on maps in the desert. He left this to me, not for lawyers, not for handwriting tests, but for this family to hear his truth. One by one, veterans stepped forward. They told stories. They pointed at the loops of the letters, the way Richard always pressed too hard on the downstrokes. They testified, not in a courtroom, but in front of the community that mattered. By the end, the applause shook the hall. Someone filmed it, uploaded it, and by nightfall it was everywhere. The tide shifted. Victor fumed online, ranting in long posts about conspiracies and betrayals. But this time, fewer people believed him. Even some of his staunchest supporters fell silent. That didn't stop him. The next evening, I came home to find my mailbox stuffed with photocopies, old newspaper clippings of Dad in uniform, annotated with Victor's handwriting. This is what a real Morales looks like. Mom cried when she saw them. He's desecrating your father's memory. But me? I wasn't shaken. For the first time, I felt something else rising inside me. Not just grief, not just anger. Purpose. Dad had given me that letter not as a shield, but as a torch. And torches weren't meant to be hidden. So I made a choice. I wouldn't just defend myself, I'd expose Victor. Every lie, every cruelty. Every time he twisted my father's name for power, because if he wanted war, he was about to learn what legacy really meant. Victor thought he could drown me in noise. Letters from lawyers, rants at community halls, late-night calls to relatives painting me as a fraud. But there's one thing about noise. It fades. Truth doesn't. I didn't plan it, not at first. I just wanted to protect Dad's words, to hold on to the last gift he left me. But Victor wouldn't stop, and the more he screamed, the more I realized. Dad had seen this coming. His letter wasn't just for me. It was a map. A compass pointing towards something Victor never wanted exposed. It started with a box. I was cleaning out Dad's study when I found it wedged behind old military files. A plain cedar box worn at the edges. Inside were letters, not to me, not to Mom, to Victor. Dozens of them. Each one was dated, each one written in Dad's careful script. And each one was the same. Pleas for Victor to return money he'd borrowed, explanations for why he couldn't keep covering for him, warnings that gambling and debts would destroy the family if Victor didn't change. My stomach turned as I read. These weren't just slips of paper, they were receipts. Proof that while Victor boasted about being the true heir, Dad had spent years quietly bailing him out, patching the holes he punched in our name. The last letter was the worst, dated a year before Dad died. This is the final time, Victor. You've broken my trust. Ethan will carry this family forward because he knows how to build instead of burn. If you want the Morales name, earn it. Until then, you are my brother in blood, but not in legacy. I sat there in silence, the words burning into me. This was it. The truth Dad had left hidden, waiting for the day Victor forced my hand. And force it he did. The next Sunday, Victor called another family summit at Uncle Manuel's house. Half the clan was there, crammed into the living room, shouting over each other before the meeting even began. I showed up late, the cedar box under my arm. The room fell quiet when I walked in. Victor smirked from his chair like a king surveying a court. "Finally decided to face us, teacher boy," he sneered. I set the box on the coffee table. Calm, measured. "No, I came to end this." I opened the lid and pulled out the first letter. Then the second. Then a stack so thick the air in the room seemed to thin. "What's this?" one ant whispered. I read aloud. Dad's words, sharp as knives, filling the room. Demands for money returned. Pleas for Victor to stop bleeding the family dry. Warnings about his gambling, his lies. By the third letter, the room was dead silent. By the fifth, gasps rippled through the crowd. By the 10th, my cousins were looking at Victor with wide, horrified eyes. Victor shot up, face red, sweat beading on his forehead. "Those are fake!" Lies. He made those up. I held up the final letter. Dad's last warning, his final verdict on Victor's character. The one that ended with, "Ethan will carry this family forward." I didn't need to say anything. The words spoke for themselves. Victor lunged forward, but Manuel grabbed his arm, eyes burning with betrayal. "You used us," Manuel spat. "All those years you preached about honor and Dad was covering your debts? You made us fight Ethan while you lied to all of us?" The room exploded. Shouts, accusations, tears. Aunts clutching their rosaries. Cousins demanding answers. Victor trying to scream over them, but no one listening anymore. For once, the noise wasn't mine to fight. It was his. I stood gathering the letters back into the box. My voice cut through the chaos. "You wanted to contest Dad's legacy? Here it is, in his own handwriting, not my words, his. You don't deserve his name, Victor. You never did." Victor's face twisted, veins bulging, but the power was gone. His throne had collapsed under the weight of truth. He shoved past his brothers and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. The silence afterward was heavy, fractured. Then my cousin Sophia spoke, voice small but steady. "Dad chose you, Ethan. He always knew one by one." Heads nodded. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to break Victor's grip on the family once and for all. When I left that night, the cedar box under my arm, the air outside felt different. Lighter. Victor had wanted war. He got it, and he lost. Not to me, but to the man whose name he tried to steal. Dad.